Good morning, everyone. We are just about to start the tourism panel, Future of European Tourism. The panel is organized by the Slovenian Tourism Board and the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology. At the beginning, I would like to do the warmly welcome to all of today's speakers and presenters. I would like to warmly welcome Mr. Zdravko Počivalšek, Ms. Kerstin Jorna, Ms. Maja, Ms. Alessandra Priante, Mr. Araújo, our respected panelists coming from VTTC, OECD, PATA, HORTEC, Government of Slovenia, and ECM. I would also like to warmly welcome all of you distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends that are with us on site and online. My name is Ljubica Knežević-Cvelbar, and I'm Professor of Tourism, coming from the School of Economics and Business at University of Ljubljana. The topic of today's discussion is bold. We are going to talk about the future of the EU tourism. And we are discussing a future in very uncertain times. I like to refer to tourism from March 2020 as a ride on a roller coaster. At one moment, you are at the top. You are fully booked. You are stretching all of your capacities and resources to facilitate the guest needs. And on the other moment, you are at the bottom. You have to close down your business. The overall contribution of tourism to GDP of Europe has halved from 2019 to 2020, from 10% to 5%. VTTC reported that 6.3 million of jobs in tourism were lost due to the pandemic. We should not forget that vulnerable groups, including females with lower qualifications and skills, and younger workers have been the most impacted. We are also facing an extensive brain drain from the industry today. Pandemic also warned us that we do not have a single tourism market in Europe. Travel protocols are not fully unified. Due to this, strengthening travel confidence remains the main challenge of the tourism industry. EU Digital COVID Certificate was welcomed by all tourism stakeholders, but this is just the beginning, not the end of the process. At the same time, there is an urgent need to change towards digital and sustainable or green. The question is how? The summer season 2021 has shown also that over-tourism, it's not over. It's probably coming back before we are realizing it. Those are just some of the questions that we want to tackle today. Therefore, I would all like you to fasten your seat belts. You probably have not heard this in a while, because we are on a tight schedule and we have a prominent guest with us, experts and tourism leaders at the global and the EU level, persons who are living and breathing for tourism. I'm kindly asking Minister of Economic Development and Technology of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Zdravko Počivalšek, to take the floor.
Dear Ms. Jorna, I hope that we will connect with she in Brussels. Ms. Priante, dear Mr. Araújo, dear panelists, dear guests. I'm honored to have the opportunity to address you at the tourism panel. Tourism as an important part of our economy is crucial when we are discussing about the future of Europe. Thank you all for accepting our invitation and joining us today here in Bled, one of the most attractive tourist destinations in Europe, and I'm sure you have already seen why. I would like also to thank all of you for joining us virtually. I'm happy we are using the power of new technologies on every step of our lives. I'm looking forward to fruitful discussion during this day, and we will addressing the following challenges of European tourism with highly competent experts and representatives of the globally most important tourist organizations. They are deeply involved in the recovery and strengthening of the resilience of Europe as a tourist destination. In 2020, Europe faced the worst crisis in the history of tourism. According to Eurostat, Eurotourism dropped by 61% during the pandemic. Long-term recovery is expected. Furthermore, experts agree that tourism will never be the same. However, tourism has always been known as an ecosystem that reacts and reflects the changed circumstances in a very short period of time. It is known by its capability to adopt the changes and recover in a due course, and I deeply believe that it will be the case in the current crisis as well. Tourism will adapt to changes and come back as a successful part of our and also European economy. Today, we will try to answer the following questions. First, will tourism ecosystem successfully recover in a short term? And second, what is the future of European tourism like? Slovenia is among the countries that strongly feel the impact of the pandemic on tourism. This branch of economy contributes 10% to Slovenian GDP, employs 7% of the working population, and is largely dependent on international tourist arrivals. Last year, international travel in Slovenia decreased significantly. It even stopped completely for some period. A 70% decrease in foreign tourist overnight stays was registered. The international receipts decreased by 61% comparing to the previous year, and therefore we expect that recovery in tourism will last 3 to 5 years in our country. The Slovenian government quickly responded to the coronavirus epidemic. We adopted some important measures in order to protect the national economy and tourism industry in times of crisis and to help in recovery. Tourism and hospitality industry has been involved to all measures within the framework of 8 packages of state aid to general industry. We adopt also a special law to aid to tourism and hospitality sector. The most popular measures with the tourism stakeholders were: first, paid waiting for work, part-time jobs, and introduction of tourist vouchers for all Slovenian residents. Slovenian Tourist Board supported governmental measures with a motivational campaign for the domestic market. It is entitled, "The Time is Now, My Slovenia." Together, we have managed to stimulate domestic tourism consumption. Last year, there was a 64% share of domestic overnight stays and 33% growth comparing to 2019. According to Eurostat, Slovenia saw the biggest rise in domestic tourism in 2020, yet this increase wasn't sufficient to balance the sharp drop in international tourism. Together with key partners, we have prepared a plan for the recovery and resilience of Slovenian tourism. We are aware that habits of tourism as well as demand will change significantly owing to health and safety reasons. Sustainable, green destinations with personalized service will be most interesting for guests. And in this context, we are certain that Slovenia has everything needed to become one of the most desired tourist destinations. It was our vision to become boutique destination for five-star experiences. We have invested a lot of energy, time, and knowledge into building a trustworthy brand, I feel Slovenia. For past 7 years, we have been working on a green and sustainable guest-oriented tourism as an alternative to mass tourism. Due to COVID situation, we have upgraded our brand with new standards. One of them is responsible travel, which is marketed and responded by the new green safe sign. It marks and emphasizes high hygiene standards, protocols, and sustainable recommendations for tourism providers and destinations. I strongly believe recovery in this sense will be easier for Slovenian tourism. We will practically keep on doing what we do best. In the recent years, we have also taken tremendous steps in the advancement of gastronomy. Gourmets can find something to enjoy in all corners of our diverse country. Our efforts resulted in the fact that Slovenia was named the European Region of Gastronomy in 2021. This is why we are focusing heavily on culinary adventures this year. We also welcome the Green Digital Certificate, which has restored EU freedom for movement, and it has crucially contributed to travel and tourism in the European Union. I believe that there should also be an agreement with third countries on mutual acceptance of COVID-19 certificate. Our priorities in tourism during holding the presidency of the EU Council until the end of the year are also linked to green and sustainable EU tourism, recovery of EU tourism in post-pandemic period, and preparation of new strategic guidelines for the period 2030-2050. Dear participants, we are looking forward to creating new successful stories and building a better future together with you. Not only for those employed in tourism, enthusiastic travelers, adventure seekers, businessmen, sectors that depend on tourism, but better future for all European citizens. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a pleasant stay here and successful work today. I hope that we will find together some solutions for better future of tourism in the world. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Počivalšek, for your contribution. Your presentation actually really well showed that Slovenia may be a showcase for the other European member states on how to take bolder steps towards sustainable development of the tourism industry. I also have a great opportunity to host an extremely relevant speaker on this year's topic of Bled Strategic Forum, Mrs. Kerstin Jorna, Director General of Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SME. I hope that we have Mr. Jorna on our digital connection. Yes, we can see you, yes. Ms. Jorna, good morning. Can you hear us and see us?
I can hear you and I can see you.
The digital floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dear Minister, dear Zdravko, and also ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be with you this morning in digital format to discuss about the tourism ecosystem. The summer travel season in Europe has been ending on a cautiously optimistic note. If we compare last summer, and the preliminary evidence shows that there is a positive glimpse and a gradually normalization. So it's a good perspective for the industry and for the future. The overall business confidence in the tourism sector was at its lowest last year of all the industrial ecosystems, minus 55%. But we've made up for it. And today, the business indicator shows plus 15%. That's because you, all the actors, also take comfort in the development for the future. We have very good signals from the EU aviation. There were almost 73% more of flights, commercial flights in the EU in July 2021 compared to July last year. Although it's still 37% less than pre-pandemic. But I'm sure that this morning and your debates, the colleagues from the international organizations will share more granular data that confirm these trends. Now, I have to say, and having been in this boat with all of you over the past year, I'm sure that nothing of this would have been achieved without the tremendous work and resilience of the European tourism industry and destinations, and of also frequent occasions like this one to discuss, to exchange best practices, and to pick up courage together. The joint efforts of the EU member states in the vaccination campaign and in the implementation of the EU digital COVID certificate have been paramount in the smooth opening of travel. By the end of August, we had more than 355 million EU digital certificates issued, and Minister, there were 45 countries either connected to the European Digital Certificate Gateway or applying it to do so. So the interest around the globe in our technical solution that works and that shows that it can work, from the great tourism destination, big landmarks, to really every single little restaurant, has proven its success. And I also want to say that together, Europe managed to apply this in less than 2 months and to develop this. But we also know that international travel is still limited because of the emergence of new COVID variants and related restrictions. Only Monday, the Council removed 6 countries from the list of countries for which travel restrictions to the EU should be lifted. So we have to monitor this. It's paramount that we keep up vaccination rates across Europe and that we stand ready to support third countries in their vaccination efforts. Our joint efforts, and I'm proud to say that it was part of my team as well, to scale up and help companies scale up the vaccine production in Europe has put us into a unique situation. The EU is not only the world's largest vaccine producer, but we're also exporting, our companies are also exporting massively to third countries. Now, talking about the long-term perspective, the EU is assisting member states in rebuilding a resilient, sustainable, and digitally fit-for-purpose tourism ecosystem with a significant support through the EU recovery funds and a number of other financial tools. Just let me say a word on the EU recovery funds. They are already reaching member states. In July, the Council approved the national recovery and resilience plans for 16 countries, allowing the member states to sign the agreements, the loan and grant agreements, and to get 13% pre-financing. As many as of you are probably aware, also the Commission launched a co-creation process to design the tourism transition pathway specifically. What we want to do is to define together with all the stakeholders a roadmap for the industry and destinations a blueprint of European tourism that is greener, fit for the digital age, and ultimately more resilient and more competitive. We published a Commission staff working document in June, and we proposed possible scenarios and concrete actions to transform the tourism ecosystem. This is a consultation paper. We hope it will spark a constructive discussion among stakeholders and help us gather concrete proposals for the transition of EU tourism. We also invited stakeholders to provide feedback in the proposed scenarios through an online consultation, which is open until 15 September. Now, if you haven't contributed yet, already quite a lot of organizations contributed, but if you haven't yet, let me make a couple of arguments why it's worthwhile. And I'm sure the discussions that you have today will also help you and inspire for contributions. So I'd like to mention the key elements proposed in this transition scenarios consultation document. First is on the green transition. It should lead to reduced environmental impact of tourism, make the environment credentials of tourism services visible and comparable for tourism. And the minister just made a very interesting example about the standards, and we're also developing a number of standards at a European level. The digital transition should prepare all of the tourism actors for the current and future challenges. This will require digitalization of SMEs and destinations, but also the skills for the people working in that ecosystem. The digital transition should be guided by the digital compass and the SME strategy at European level, so that's important frameworks. And actions supporting green and digital transition would directly contribute to improved resilience of the tourism ecosystem. For example, better tools and digitalized infrastructures to coordinate possible restrictions. And Professor, you mentioned that as one of the pain points still, that we have better coordination amongst countries. We need an appropriate enabling framework, and we are seeking for your ideas on that, supporting policies, appropriate skills, and targeted investments. What we want to do is to really empower you, the actors of the ecosystem, to take forward that transition, your transition. As I said, our survey is still open for the next 2 weeks, and I would really appreciate as many comments as possible, because that will help us to also have a broad and inclusive debate on the way forward. So on the way forward, what we are planning is a series of workshops in October to deepen the assessments, analyze your contributions. You know, sometimes the contributions also contradict each other. So how should we solve? How do we find the middle ground? And we will then are planning together with the Slovenian presidency to discuss the transition pathway with the tourism ministers and participants of the European Tourism Forum, that, thank you, presidency, you are hosting in November. If all goes well, we are planning to finalize the transition pathway still in December. And what we want is to have this pathway as a basis for a multi-annual engagement of the Council. Such a shared EU agenda for tourism, specifying targets, actions, and commitments, would stabilize the course of the transition and the recovery, and would guarantee continuity and predictability also for your investments in this sector. Of course, like the minister said, we can only achieve this together. We need the involvement of the member states, of the destinations, of all of you, the actors of the tourism ecosystem. I'm sure we can make it happen together, and I wish you very fruitful discussions today. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks to Ms. Jorna on this realistic, optimistic, and quite open standpoint on how the tourism in Europe in the future would look like. I think that we're all glad to hear that European Commission as executive power is thinking about tourism, but we will be tackling this further on in our discussion. I will also ask you now to follow us in the video message from the person number 1 in global tourism, Mr. Zubar Pololikishvaki, General Secretary of the UNWTO, and he's going to provide us a global perspective of the future development. I tried with the name the best as I could, Alessandra. Thank you very much, Alessandra, for... It's easier than it looks. Yes, thank you very much. May we have a video please?
Your Excellency, dear Mr. Zdravko Počivalšek, Minister of Economic Development and Technology, distinguished guests, dear friends, I would like to begin by congratulating our Slovenian colleagues for this excellent initiative. Now, in its 16th year, the Bled Strategic Forum is a leading platform whose impact goes for beyond Central and Southeastern Europe. I am happy to see that tourism is a part of the forum's focus. This highlights how the relevance of tourism goes beyond the sector itself and how important it is to the development of whole economies and societies. Tourism provides opportunities. It is a lifeline for many millions of people across the globe. It creates jobs, supports businesses, and preserves our natural and cultural heritage. The pandemic has placed many of these benefits on hold. The situation remains challenging despite our continued efforts to restart tourism. To fill the void created in national and global economies and to ensure a lasting recovery, we must act immediately and decisively. We must place sustainability and innovation at the very heart of our recovery efforts. We must foster competitiveness and ensure social inclusion. Our organization is proud to work hand in hand with our member states to rebuild the tourism ecosystem responsibly and sustainably. We have already shown that safe travel is possible, but we need to rebuild people's trust in tourism. I encourage you to continue to include all stakeholders from across the tourism value chain in our discussions and to ensure that their voices are heard. We have all felt the impact of this pandemic. Only together we will overcome the challenges and make tourism more sustainable and resilient. I trust this will be the main focus of today's talks, and I wish you all a productive forum. Thank you.
I would also like now to invite Ms. Maja Pak, the director of the Slovenian Tourism Board, an organization that is dedicated and devoted to sustainable development and promotion in Slovenia, to take a floor and have a speech on tourism development in Slovenia. Thank you, Maja.
Dear Minister Zdravko Počivalšek, honorable guests and speakers, we are delighted to have you here at Bled in person for the 7th tourism panel. When we last had the privilege to meet in this inspiring place 2 years ago, the topic was the struggle with our tourism, and the discussion was how to better manage tourism. In the last 18 months, we have witnessed pandemic's unprecedented and brutal impact on travel and tourism. Even rather recent history shows the travel industry is no stranger to disruption. Only in the past 20 years, travel companies have had to adapt and reinvent due to September 11, the financial crisis, climate change, the rise of online booking, and due to numerous domestic and regional conflicts. But then came COVID-19. The pandemic has, on the one hand, highlighted the global importance of the travel and tourism economically, as well as its vast interconnectedness with other industry. And on the other hand, exposed the vital importance of traveling for the freedom and health of human nature. It has also given us time to reflect, the luxury we could hardly afford in the years of rapid growth. Let's be honest, our industry has in the past few decades performed both brilliantly and terribly. Somewhere along the way, we, industry as a whole, took the wrong turn. We chose quantity over quality. Surely we cannot continue measuring the success with arrival numbers and tourism contribution to GDP. And luckily, it's not a new debate. We are talking about recovering, also about the importance of boosting resilience. And I'm confident to claim that there is a general consensus among countries, destinations, and tourism businesses that the industry must build back better, or rather build forward. Yes, easy to agree, but at the same time, as consumer confidence rises, we are projecting when visitor numbers will get back to the year 2019. To business as usual? Are we ready to picture what is to come after 2019 numbers? How far do we want to go, equipped with new knowledge and experience? Let's not forget that it's not just our industry in distress. We have forced the whole planet into distress, into a climate emergency. Climate scientists have long predicted extreme weather will become more intense as a result of industrial activity, dirty energy, deforestation, and so on. But the recent records of heat and rain salvaging across Europe and the world should really make us ask ourselves, what if we went so far that the course would become irreversible and damage irreparable? That we force the planet into the same kind of global shock as COVID-19 has caused to humanity and economy across the globe, or even bigger. So now is the time not only to ask the hard questions, but to get consensus on the right answers. How do we see the future of tourism in Europe? Should we keep doing things the way we did before? What needs to be done to emerge from the crisis better, more sustainable, more ethical, more responsible, more empowered and less selfish and more united? This is the moment when individual collective action should reach a critical change to enable structural change. In Slovenia, we started to ask these questions some years ago already, before being overwhelmed by high growth that we knew could not be sustainable in the long run. Determined to become a green boutique destination, we developed concrete tools to tackle these issues. With our green scheme of Slovenian tourism, we managed to get all our key stakeholders on board in our efforts to develop Slovenian tourism in a sustainable way, hand in hand with local communities and residents. I'm happy to follow very responsible and ambitious steps more and more European countries are taking to develop tourism in a more sustainable way, like Portugal and some other countries. But in the globalized world, individual efforts are not enough. We as Europe must work together to rethink all aspects of managing and marketing tourism. And let me briefly sum up 7 key challenges we need to address. First of all, let's do some new mathematics. Due to all this distress and changes, we as society have to come up with a paradigm shift in how we want to live on the planet. We need to consider economic priorities and the new criteria of well-being in our society. Tourism desperately needs new performance metrics if we want to transform into more environmentally and socially sustainable, climate-smart and fair industry. So, can we declare the emergency on this? Second, we can't do it alone. There is an urgent need for the power of the collective. I believe there is no other industry that is so complex, so interdependent, with so many conflicting interests. It can only function to its best and in the long run if the interests and strategies of the national governments, municipalities, tourism boards, airports, hotels, and last but not least, the residents are aligned. And this is, in my belief, the biggest challenge. So can we talk openly to align those conflicting interests? Third, we need to make room for the negotiation for the most important stakeholders, the local community on the one hand, and people working in the industry on the other. In the years of appealing growth, we have somehow missed measuring success according to locals' attitude and sentiments about tourism. We have mostly focused on the revenues and tourist satisfaction. And pandemics has virtually overnight taken tens of millions of jobs, turning these people to other, less fragile and often better paying jobs. So are we ready to address these pressing issues? Fourth, Sustainable tourism needs to be the new norm. The travel and tourism industry is becoming more and more sustainable, but there is still a long way to go. Companies, destinations, travelers need to be more aware of and held accountable for our impact. We need a clear and binding roadmap for sustainable transition of the industry. This means investments in sustainable infrastructure, development of more sustainable business models, sustainability standards, and allocating funding only towards sustainable solutions. Future needs to be greener and smarter. So, can we agree on sustainable performance metrics to be the catalysts for all we do? Fifth, we need to rethink the roles of destination management organizations and give them the mandate to perform. In a changing and unstable tourism environment, DMO's job has become the most complex and important tourism job. It's not only about the shift from marketing to management, but taking this a step further. DMO, as a director of an orchestra composed of a complex and delicate mix of stakeholders, each with different interests. So can we take on the role of stewardship of our places? Sixth, change is the only constant. Some businesses have already responded to the pandemic by restructuring for greater efficiency and come up with new, better business models. Others are still struggling to survive. COVID-19 has brought a significant change in the lifestyle of hundreds of millions of people across the globe, and travel priorities have changed dramatically. Recovery will be uneven, with most dramatic consequences for airlines and business travel. We all need to focus on sustaining the short-term survival of the industry and adapt to find opportunities for better and stronger tourism in a new normality. So can we embrace adaptability, as it just might be the most important skill in the new normality? And last but not least, let's build together forward. There is the urgent need for joint and coordinated European policies regarding travel and health restrictions in short term. And there is the need for the cooperation at reinventing European tourism for the future, to make it better, to make it stronger. So can Europe set an example to other regions of the world? These are the topics and questions that we will tackle today with our distinguished guests. So I'm looking forward to the debate and conclusions. Do I believe that travel will rebound from this crisis? I believe it will, but only if we make it better. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Maja, for this inspiring speech. It went much beyond Slovenia. It was the call for changing a mindset in tourism for all of us. Having this said, I would like to thank you all of the speakers for the first part of the discussion, and we are going on the second part today, in which we have two prominent speakers that are going to take the floor. Professor Alessandra Priante, UNWTO Director of Regional Department for Europe, and Luis Araújo, President of the Tourism, the Portugal, and President of the European Travel Committee. Alessandra, you are starting this discussion, or this second part of the day, so please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all. Buongiorno. Thank you very much, Minister, Secretary of State, Maja, Luis. It was a great pleasure to share the stage with you. I think it's part of, maybe we should start putting it in our contract of participation to conferences. Either we come together or we don't. Thank you very much, Slovenia, for having invited us to this fantastic forum. It is dramatically important that in these times we send messages. And we feel that the tourism industry, the tourism sector, the governments of the nations need to send messages when we organize these meetings and we bring you all together in total safety, wearing your mask, having everything under absolute control, having testing facilities, we are making a very strong statement, and we're saying that we're absolutely able to continue doing stuff. We're not stopping, and actually maybe we're using this moment to do things better. Now, I would like to, this is part of the things that I was asked to do as Director of Europe of UNWTO, which is the United Nations Agency for Global Tourism, but not just tourism. Responsible, universally accessible, and sustainable. We have a strong mandate, which is to actually bring tourism into the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. So we are mediating between the bigger objectives and try to convince, especially the governments of our member states and beyond, that tourism is a driving force, not just for economic growth, but also for social inclusion and for absolute restart and reactivation of this engine which we call world. Well, from now on, I think we should start including the stars, as some people want to do sort of, spatial tourism, but I think that's a little bit too early to plan at the moment. Nevertheless, having said this, I need to bring all of us back to the ground, and we have to be a little bit brutal here and share some minuses and share some data, because it was already said before by various sides, and thank you, Maja, I really appreciated your presentation, as if we were somehow connected without even talking. But data is definitely, now more than ever, absolutely fundamental in understanding what's going on. And not just because we need to use it, for example, at a European level, to go to the European institutions and say, we need a little bit more money. But this is important for us to understand how crucial tourism is for all of us. So, if you allow me, I was told I had 20 minutes, but I promise you that my presentation is going to be as long. It's not going to be as long as the 20 minutes, because I would very much prefer to leave you the numbers for your own reflection, and then, continue definitely the discussion with such distinguished speakers. So, we're about to release our barometer now at the end of September, so I am not bringing you the freshest data. Nevertheless, we are continuously monitoring, and I can tell you we're not really detaching ourselves, unfortunately, from this dramatic Polaroid that I'm giving you. Basically, we are still running on a more than minus 80% of international tourism arrivals. Because it is true that, and this is compared to 2019, and compared to last year, it's minus 65, which means we've done a little bit better, but with absolutely at no point out of it. Now, why is this slide important? Because this slide should remind us we are here under the presidency of Slovenia, of the Council of the European Union. We are here to talk about the future of European tourism. Even though I personally, in UNWTO, am in charge of Europe, which of course in our case is a larger Europe, I would like to remind us all that tourism is global. That in 2019, we had absolutely no boundaries. So in 2019, we were discussing how many Chinese do we want in our countries, okay? So we were discussing, okay, I need to get the Koreans. Can you kindly share some tips with me? Because, and now, international, transnational, out of Europe, tourists are really a very minor part. And this is one of the major problems that we absolutely need to overcome. For as much as we're doing, for as much as we're growing, for as much as we're getting better, we are not self-sufficient. In 2019, Europe was the #1 destination for the whole world. 51% of international arrivals were actually reaching Europe. And we're nowhere near that. And we know that we cannot do it ourselves. Okay, so let's keep this in mind, because this is very crucial for the challenges that we have. Maja, I don't have 7 points, I only have 4, you'll see it. But, I think we're very much aligned, even though I much prefer the number 7. So what is this in terms of impact? this is our global official data. We're talking about over 120 million direct tourism jobs. Now, we all know the difference between direct and indirect. And for me to have the Kerstin Lorna to be with us today saying the things she said is an absolute achievement. Because out of all the bad things that have happened, we did manage to get the Commission's attention, finally, on the fact that tourism is absolutely fundamental. And when I say Commission, I also talk Ursula von der Leyen, the President herself, and everybody. We have with us, and you will see, as UNWTO developed a strong relation, never before, with at least 6 commissioners. And we have the Vice President of the European Commission, Margaritis Skinas, who's holding our hand in this path. And this is completely unprecedented. And it's a great achievement because we've been doing advocacy for how many years? And now finally someone listens to us. So why am I stopping here? Because direct tourism jobs means that there is an indirect portion which is left out, which is much wider. And jobs at the moment, whether it's skills or whether it's occupation, is absolutely the #1 priority. It is an emergency. Tourism is an industry of people. And without people, we're nothing. So if we continue in this sort of not very pleasant, obviously, overlook, the impacts of GDP lost goes in the ranges of trillions. When we lose trillions of tourism receipts, we lose a lot. And to give you an idea of trillions, if we talk about 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillions, we're talking about the GDP of the most developed nations in the world. We're talking about the GDP of the G20 countries. Italy has I think, 3 trillion GDP. I mean, or other countries, Slovenia is definitely less than that. So we're talking the loss of an entire country's GDP is the loss of tourism globally. And of course, what does this mean? If we have less money from tourism, we have less money to invest in all the things that we started to do when all this started, which is to support the lifelines of the small islands and development states, to invest in the conservation of nature, of cultural heritage, of patrimony. We were making the step forward. We were all talking to each other saying, okay, this is great, numbers are great, but we have to really improve because we have to start being very sustainable, so we have to start making sacrifices. Little did we know that the universe took us, for real, and we had made a huge sacrifice because we stopped everything. So lately we've done a very interesting report together with UNWTO, which is also stressing the economic consequence of COVID-19 on tourism. And you can see that the economic loss in 2021 is estimated to reach $2.4 trillion. And this is really very much. What did the UNWTO do from the beginning? We did, first of all, we stopped and we said, what's happening now? Because we're global tourism. The topics we were concerned about before might not be so relevant now. So we've done what is one of our real big mandates, which is to bring people together and to really create that type of awareness and sharing platforms that would allow the stakeholders and the policymakers to get together and to identify the problems and mostly to design and share the solutions. Because obviously we have all the 5 regions of the world and the problems of Africa are not the same of Asia and definitely not the same of the Americas as much as the Middle East and Europe have their own vision. So out of the many, let's say, things that we've done and we do regularly in our data approach, we forecast. I didn't want to bring you the curve, which is our usual forecast, because it would be missing the data of the summer, and therefore I'm hoping that the one that we will release at the end of September, continue checking UNWTO.org, is going to look a little bit better than the U or L shape that it has at the moment. But we are carrying out continuous surveys. And one of the survey is basically pointed out, this is for the tourism sector, mainly for the tourism operators. And we're asking, when do you think we're gonna go back to pre-pandemic levels? And we all agree that nothing is looking as closer as 2024. So we are definitely, we have to be optimistic, like Ms. Lorna, but we're also very aware of the fact that it's going to take time. Why is it going to take time? Well, because this has to be a lesson learned. We cannot get out of this situation going back to normal. I was reading some articles of people saying the prices of the hotels have increased and occupations level are still not complete and stuff. Looking for the break even is important, but it's not the way out. Breaking even is something that matters in the long run. And so we have to start thinking that if we don't do things right, and if we don't take this lesson learned and start implementing solutions that would definitely change the face of tourism, we've lost. And if we lose now, I'm sorry to be dramatic, it's going to be very difficult to lift our head up again. And that's why it was very correctly pointed out, we need examples. We need points of reference. And I would like to leave you. I said I will conclude my presentation just by going very briefly through things that are going to be available for you afterwards. But I would really like to set the ground with 4 core issues for now, at the moment, for us at UNWTO, but we believe for the whole of the tourism industry at a global level. Jobs and skills. I'm not going to repeat myself. This is really the most important thing. Shortage, lack of preparation skills, which for us is also linked to education, and continuously work on making people understand that working in tourism is not a second job or like the job that you do because you don't want to do anything else. Working in tourism is sort of close to a mission, and it's incredibly passionate, but it's probably one of the most beautiful jobs in the world because you get to work in your own country doing something good for your own country. So I was having a fantastic dinner in Hotel Bled just 2 days ago, and there was a very professional young man who was our waiter, and he said, "I'm your waiter." I said, "You're not a waiter. You're the ambassador of your nation's gastronomy and wine," because every time he was bringing his dish, the dish and the wine, he was explaining to us everything. We need people like that. These are the people that make the difference, because as I said before, tourism is an industry of emotions, an industry of people. Second fundamental element, and this scales up to what we do and what we have to continue doing. Coordination and collaboration. It was said, protocols, even within Europe, sometimes don't even work. They're not mutually recognized. This is an issue because domestic tourism, nearby territories, now became definitely a great chance. It is not really a complete choice because, of course, it's a choice because many other things are limited. But we need to think that we need to share protocols with the rest of the world. We need to have the rest of the world aligned so we can go back to traveling the way we used to. Whether we're using different means of transportation doesn't matter. But we need to keep that coordination and collaboration high up on the agenda and continue pushing for governments all over the world and higher up institutions to actually do that. Third point, programming and managing. We cannot enter. We have no more excuses. Tourism is about programming. Now, this summer, we've all experienced, everything was last minute. Everything was decided the last week. People were making choices 3 days before going on holiday. Okay, it's good, but this is not tourism. Tourism is about deciding what you're going to do with your destination in 2025. And in order for you to do that, we need to make the effort to say that, who am I? What do I want? Would you guys have just literally anybody come into your house? I'm sure not. You would highly select the people that you're welcoming. And you would decide to change maybe, but you're probably going to pick the people that you know are going to appreciate your house. So this has to be exactly the same approach. Because we're not talking about a one-time, we're talking about repeating. Tourism is also about repeating the experience. So we need to think. If I come to Slovenia now after my experience in Bled, I'm already thinking when I'm going to come back with my family. And this is a very good point because this is tourism that guarantees you to say, okay, I've programmed and I'm achieving my objectives and to keep everything under control. Last one, sustainability, sustainability, sustainability. Enough putting sustainable next to your new tourism strategy. Sustainability has to become a practice from us as people, from us as tourists, from governments, from stakeholders. It's more than an effort. We were saying with Secretary of State just a few minutes ago, Slovenia has been it's a sustainable vocation, and you've been doing it. 10 years ago, we were all looking at you to say, wow, they're really doing it. Remind everyone that you're doing it, because it's not anymore the talking, it's the doing. And in this sense, definitely Portugal is a great, great example. So I'm going to leave you with these points of discussions, but I would like to point out the UNWTO has put forward an incredible amount of initiatives to restart tourism. And those initiatives are all available for free, or definitely you can reach me at priante@unwto.org. And we need you to always hold our hands, because tourism is the industry of togetherness. So in this, I wish you a great continuation. Luis, I guess the floor is yours. And thank you very much. Thank you, Minister.
May I have you for a minute? Just for a minute, Luis, I apologize. Alessandra, you did warm us all up. So I kind of decided to share a personal story and ask for one question before you leave. You were mentioning jobs, jobs, jobs. I was working as a receptionist in a family-owned hotel this summer, not because I'm qualified, but because we could not find the staff. So Alessandra, can you be more concrete? We are all suffering this. You mentioned that the human capital in tourism will hamper the recovery on the long run. So what can we do? On the supranational level, on national level, we have a representative of governments here and companies.
Well, first of all, I think that there's never one single solution. But normally in these cases, you have to be extremely practical. And it requires a large type of intervention, in the sense that some countries, for example, are adopting these form of support incomes. But we are now in a situation where we have to regain trust. Regain trust in ourselves, regain trust in tourism. To regain trust in tourism also as a job opportunity, we really have to make an effort, which is a very profound effort. When you are sort of locked at home and somebody keeps you at home and you find your way, even though you don't want to, but you find your way because surviving is in the instinct of the human beings. And somebody tells you, now you need to go out, work in a kitchen from, I would say, 4 a.m. in the morning until hardly midnight, because you're serving in a top hotel. Your motivations to go out of the house diminish. So our duty here is not just to put measures in place, practical measures, which is to incentivize the possibility, support schools that train people, not necessarily only economy and tourism economy, but also professional schools, restart the summer programs, get everybody more involved in the general life. But besides that, we really need to make sure that it's globally understood that tourism is an alternative for life that can change your contribution to your own country. Because one thing that we noticed, I don't know if many of you maybe disagree, by staying at home, we sometimes saw home after a long time. We saw home, we saw our friends, we saw our neighborhood, we went driving around villages that we maybe only seen when we were 5 years old to go and see our relatives. And we looked around and said, oh, wow, this is really beautiful. By the way, you know what? Maybe next year, I'm actually going, even if I could go somewhere else, I'm actually going to stay because it was a great experience. So in this sense, we have to hold on to that positive feeling to make sure that people understand how important that is. I'm sure governments are very aware of the skills gap and the jobs and occupation need. So that, yes, would require specific measures. But overall, I think the global effort has to be slightly more, if you allow me the word, I mean, here we have Rikli, so, it's, and the story of it, a little bit more holistic in this sense.
Thank you very much for
You're
this
welcome.
answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. Now I'm kindly asking Luis Araújo. I've really tried really hard, Luis, to take the floor and provide us with the insight on the future of the European tourism. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Luca. That's why I'm not going to pronounce any Slovenian name this morning. Thank you so much. Well, dear Minister and dear Secretary of State, thank you so much for the invitation and congratulations on the organization of this forum. I think today and now more than ever, it's important to discuss things, but live. Dear Maja, thank you so much. I couldn't think of a better orchestra director than you. So thank you. If you want to move to another country, Portugal will welcome you for sure. And thank you all for listening. I will try to be very brief. I'm not sure if I have answers. I have a lot of questions, as anyone here. But I think we all have some ways. So what I will do now and today is try to point some ways, or at least raise some questions regarding the ways. We're talking about the future of European tourism, but we're talking about the future of Europe. And there is no future of Europe without tourism. That's for sure. That's something that we have to say. And Alessandra pointed out very well that the past year was very tough. It was a very difficult year for everyone, especially for those inside this room. But it was, I won't say it was a positive, but it brought us some light. And I will try to showcase a little bit where we are. And it brought us, it brought us some ideas of the importance of tourism. And it has to do with the GDP in our countries, with the growth that we're seeing in our countries, thanks to the travel industry, the intersection of cultures and the exchange of cultures between our countries. All this is positive. But there is something a little bit further up, which is the importance of tourism for the rest of the economic activity. And I'm really happy to have here the Minister of Economy, because we always say this. Tourism is not just about tourism. And I bring you a very short example of this. This is the correlation of guests from the USA and Brazil in Portugal and the exports in wine. And you can see there's a perfect correlation through the years with the increase of guests from the USA and Brazil in Portugal and the exports in wine for these countries, to these countries. So this is important, and sometimes we lack this ability of thinking that we're not just the ones inside this room, we're a much bigger group than this. Europe and tourism. I only have 6 points, and then I'll make a discussion on the 7th. The 7th is a little bit bigger. Europe and tourism. In fact, this year was a very positive one, as Alessandra very well said. And it's very difficult to be here speaking after Alessandra, because she's very passionate. For the first time, the European institutions, our governments, started looking at tourism in a real way, in a positive way. And that's why we have this. In 2 months, the COVID digital certificate was launched. A European Union guide on tourism funding was launched, and I recommend everyone, it was launched by the Commission. I recommend everyone to visit, especially from the industry. We will have a EU tourism info dashboard with all the information regarding tourism as a whole in Europe, but more. Tourism was elected one of the 14 industrial ecosystems of Europe, recognized as a sector in need of a transition pathway for a more resilient tourism. And finally, and we hope we will have during the Slovenian presidency, the EU Tourism Agenda 2030-2050 and its transversatility with other EU policies. But we know that we have travel trends, and we've heard a lot about this. The family and small group and solo travel, the year of value and values, the work remotely, the small lodging, the sustainability. These are all travel trends that will stay with us for sure for the next few years. For the immediate term, what we have is that Europeans want to travel. 70% of Europeans want to travel this year, and most of them want to travel inside Europe. Second, health protocols are fundamental. 2/3 of the people need health protocols in place in the destinations where they want to go. And finally, Europeans for the next semester are looking for sun and beach and city breaks. Yes, city breaks. Cities are suffering all across Europe. So there is an opportunity. There is a huge opportunity. So what's missing? What's missing now is that we think of the future as it is. And we focus not only on, on these problems, but how can we adjust? How can we adapt? How can we finally say that there is no Europe without tourism, and that tourism sector needs the European efforts? This is the fundamental question. And, okay, this is challenging, because this wasn't supposed to be like this, but I'll try. Trust me, it was formatted. It was okay. It has to do the importance of tourism, and we have bigger challenges in the future. Brexit is a challenge for every country in Europe, and at the end of this year we will have changes. Time is a challenge. Urgency is a challenge. We need decisions right now. A day that passes is a day that tourism loses, but it's a day that the health system wins, and we need to find the balance between one and the other. Build a bridge between one and the other. The values of the European Union are at stake right now. And when we talk about values, yesterday I went to see which are the values of the European Union. And I'm proud to say Google told me yesterday that we had human dignity, democracy, equality, rule of law, human rights, and mobility. Mobility. This is a value of Europe. We have never seen mobility so damaged as this past year. And we have to do something about this. We have the tools in our hands to do something. It's an international decision, it's a national decision, but it's also a travel and tourism industry decision, and we have to help on this subject. Mobility, freedom of movement, is not just giving citizens the right to move to another country or to move freely inside Europe. It's also the right to welcome other people in our own country. And this has been put in jeopardy over the past year. This is fundamental. How do we do this? Well, tourism is the answer, and I have to say, but we need to work harder between ourselves too. And we need to show Europe that we can be the answer. And we can be the answer based on one simple thing. Tourism is a force for good in the world. It has to be a force for good, to protect the planet, to protect our society, to protect the values of the European Union. And we can achieve all these sustainable goals if we want to. I have to say that one of the things that struck me most when I arrived at Tourism of Portugal, and I've been in the industry for 20 years, trust me, in the private sector, 5 years ago, was that we had 3 or 4 of these sustainable goals as a focus for the tourism industry. We can participate in any of these, the 17. And I think when we look at benchmark and an example to the world, Slovenia is an example in terms of sustainability. And I think this benchmark, and to answer a little bit what Alessandra was saying, the lessons that Europe has to give to the world, this is a wonderful lesson. And this has to be benchmarked as a lesson for the rest of the world. But we need to work not as the victims or the villains of this process, because usually tourism is seen as the victim because we suffer with natural disasters, or as the villain because we throw out people from the center of the cities. But we have to be the actors and the drivers of this change. And we have to protect and promote the values of the European Union. This is what we have to do right now and for the future. And we'll do this in a very simple way, with responsibility. And when we talk about responsibility, we talk basically of four things. Diversity. Tourism is based on diversity. This is the sector that welcomes everyone, that accepts everyone in our country, and gives them the best experience. So why is it that we have more than 50% of our workforce are women, only 20% are C-level executives, and only 5% of the CEOs of tourism companies are women? This is fundamental. And now I have a lady there saying, I have only 5 minutes, so I'm going to finish. This is fundamental, and we have to think about this, how to implement these changes in our own businesses, in our own countries, inside Europe. The second one has to do with mobility. We all know it's a very delicate subject. We have to reactivate our industry based on mobility, inside European market, but outside too. And we need changes on this. I'm going to talk a little bit further. We need inclusion. We were talking about workforce. The other day, I saw the difference between diversity and inclusion. Diversity is inviting someone to the party. Inclusion is inviting that same person to dance. And we're forgetting to invite many people that work in the sector to dance, especially the labor force that we're lacking so much. We're inviting them to be a part on this. And the fourth, cooperation, that we have always talked, and that has been so much talk here. Public and private cooperation between countries, with the European institutions. And I'm proud to say that we have been, through the ETC, having a wonderful dialogue with the Commission and with the European institutions. Even today, there is a discussion in the European Parliament about skills, which is crucial for our sector. So these are the four activities that we need to tackle if we want to be more responsible. But we need also a different attitude from and inside the European level, especially from the European institutions. Clearly a communication issue. We need to be clearer and simple on the message we pass. We're not talking to people, we're talking to 100% of the population, and we need to address them, bringing the message of these values, as I said in the beginning. The second one has to do with data, and I'm always worried when we talk about data, because data is nothing. Data is only something if we transform it into knowledge. Regarding mobility, what we talked a little bit earlier, I don't know if you've seen, but the European Center for Disease Control at the end of last year said that tourists were the lowest risk population in the world, that quarantines were not effective in controlling the pandemic. We have data in our hands. What do we do with that? What do we do with the information from the personal locator card that we all fill when we go from one country to the other? Why don't we collect that and see, in fact, if traveling, if mobility is affecting the control of the pandemic? And this is something that we really have to focus very clearly. And third, and once again, trust. Simplification, gathering everyone, bringing other people to our sector and showing them they can thrive and they can have their own business in tourism and travel industry. We always say that if we need a better planet, if we need a better Europe, we need a better tourism. This is something that is very clear, and we're all doing our stake, but there is still a way to go and something that we're missing. This is a people industry. We forget that any decision, any comment that we do is based on peoples. And most important, on this, 450 million inhabitants and 700 million visitors. This is what Europe gets yearly, or at least in 2019. And the importance of this is that we have to be the role model for the world. And I agree with Maja, with everyone. We have to change our targets. We have to change our perception of development. And I'm going to leave you with a small video, but first with this sentence from Mujica, which is the former president of Uruguay. Development cannot go against happiness, against human happiness. Maybe this should be the key performance indicator for the future for Europe. I'm sure if we would address this as it is, it would be much more efficient than we've been so far, and development would be in favor of everyone and not just a few. I will leave you with a video, and this is a message to all of you, but especially to Europe.
It's time to
and the
go.
world.
Time to quench your thirst, to live. Time to shake and make. Time to head back on the road, our way. A freedom feast, fold the mist. It's time to go. It's time to speed up the pulse, intensify the beat. To get together, meet and greet. It's time to go. Time to lift off and cruise. It's showtime. Turn on the lights and hit the stage. To exhale. It's time to go. It's time for legends, a bright era. Time for the skilled to be raw, to make way for the stubborn adventurers, the ones who outline frontiers and narrow the gaps. It's time to go. Time to leave a mark, an exclamation one. Time to roam and ramble on, eyes on fire. Time to stand out and be courage. It's time to inspire.
Thank you so much.
Luis, thank you very much for this inspiring presentation. Yesterday over the dinner, you told me that I may ask any question. That was not maybe the right strategy, but
Even
I'm
confidential
sure,
one.
but I'm sure you are the right person to answer the two questions that we actually have. And they're going to tackle mobility and inclusion. We all see the elephant in the room. And we have a single market in the EU, as I talked at the beginning, but what about a single tourism market? What has to be done to unify travel protocols and enable free mobility within the member states and between member states and the third countries, including the overseas markets? Can you just openly share with us your standpoints on this one?
Openly?
Yeah.
More
Well.
openly? I would. Yesterday, the mayor of Bled said something that was really, well, the speech was very inspiring, but he said something that was, it's true. It's about us. It's not about, and I'm sorry, I'm terribly sorry, I shouldn't say this here, but it's not about governments, it's not about politics, it's not about institutions, it's about us. And we need to give the tools for the decision makers, in this case, to understand that this is important. And we have the tools in our hand. So I think when we talk about single market, I couldn't think of a better single market than tourism single market. Because we move freely, or we used to any other country. We learned a lot with the experiences we saw in other countries. Maybe there is a lack of communication between parts of Europe. There is a lack of knowledge, and we need to improve that, and I think we should address that very clearly. But we will never win if we don't share our experiences, if we don't take this data and transform it into knowledge and apply that. We cannot keep putting or classifying countries by the color of their situation just because it was made a year ago. Things change. Vaccination process moved on. That's why when I say it's urgent, it is urgent, and we need decisions to be taken very shortly and very quickly.
Thank you very much. I would have another question just on engagement, and actually one of the topics that is tackling the whole forum are migrations.
Yeah.
And we are not opening them in tourism, so we may expect more migrant crisis in the future.
Yes.
This is not, we have pandemic now, but the crises are to come. They will impact Mediterranean countries for sure, because they are exposed and also tourism very intensive. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to reverse the question, and with this I promise I'm finalizing. Can we use tourism to help solve the migration crisis in the future?
We have to. And I'm glad, because usually the question is asked on the opposite side. It's asked, will migration be a damage to tourism? And I say, tourism is the answer to migration. We've just talked, we have to join the pieces. We're talking about lack of handwork, of labor, and we have so many migrants that want to come. We've developed a program in Portugal, sorry, I have to speak about Portugal, which is training for refugees. We had more than 170 refugees trained by our tourism schools. Most of them open restaurants, and I have to say the best Syrian restaurant in Lisbon is from 5 of these refugees. This is what we have to do in a European level. And this, we can do it together, collectively, governments and private sector. So even here is a huge opportunity for cooperation to tackle one problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for those great answers
and
great discussion. Thank you very much. It's been quite intensive up to now. We shared a lot of thoughts, a lot of inspiring thoughts, yes, and we are continuing with our panel today. The panel will be hybrid as well. We have 3 participants joining us in live and 3 participants that will be with us online. So I would like to first call the participants that are in the room with us to join the floor together with me, and the rest of them will join us digitally. So Marie Audrian, Director General of Hortec, may you please take the floor. Thank you very much. Petra Stušek, the CEO of Tourism Ljubljana and the President of the Board at the European Cities Marketing. Petra, thank you for joining us. Last but not the least, our State Secretary at the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology of Republic Slovenia, Simon Zajc. Please take the floor. I would also like to greet our panelists that are with us online. And yes, we can see you all. I hope that you can all see us and hear us. You're missing the beautiful view of the Bled Lake, but we are happy to have you today with us. So online, we are greeting Lola Una Cardenas, Vice President of Government Affairs of VTTC. Lola, hello. We are greeting Ms. Jane Stacey, Head of the Tourism Unit at OECD. Jane, good morning. And also warm greetings to Dr. Mario Hardy, the former CEO at PATA. Good morning, Mario. We have 75 minutes for this discussion, and up to now we were on time, which is great for a professor. I have to admit that. I will be very brief in the questions, and I would also ask you panelists to be brief in answering them and to be direct and to the point. We also will have 15 minutes for the questions at the end of this discussion for the audience that is with us in the room. So please keep the notes, and you may ask the questions at the end of this panel. I may start with government and with State Secretary Ms. Zajc. So you have collaborated in designing the government aid packages in Slovenia for recovery during the COVID crisis. We all well know them. There were 8 of them, so we're kind of very familiar with them. In your opinion, very honest one, did Slovenia respond and support the tourism industry during the crisis? Well, which measures were efficient? And if you would be on this position for another time, hopefully you will not be, would you do anything differently?
The last question is the toughest, I guess. Yeah, well, when the COVID-19 crisis started in Slovenia, and I believe it was the same in each country of European Union, we had to look at the specific of our tourism when we talk about tourism. And the thing in Slovenia is that we largely are dependent on foreign tourists. More than 70% of our overnight stays are done by foreigners. And this was the first and the major problem to solve during the COVID-19 crisis. So we decided to do it in two steps. The first step was done by our tourist board. They have launched a very successful and well-prepared campaign for our citizens to stay in Slovenia, to explore Slovenia further. The campaign was called "The Time Is Now Slovenia," and it's still going on. Actually, it's very successful. And on top of that, we decided to put initial effort in the form of vouchers for each and every citizen of Slovenia, resident, that could be used in the tourism sector. This measure was really effective, even so that we decided to redo it this year, but in a wider spectrum also for sports and culture. And this is, I believe, this approach was quite successful. Of course, the rest of the measures were done also for the rest of the economy. But the tourism is so specific, and it was hit the most that we decided not to only have the 8 packages, we decided to do another one, especially and only for the tourism. Also, we included sports, culture. We also included, for example, the craft beer makers, because as was said today many times, the tourism is so wide, so many different industries depend on it, and this was obvious in this crisis. So how important it is to have a well-functioning, well-running tourism sector. So we decided to help them additionally this year. The second thing that was pointed out to be the biggest problem, because those measures were, I think that we can all agree in Slovenia, they were effective and they were, let's say, on time. Some of them could be adapted earlier, but basically we did a good job. But the second problem that was introduced to us by our stakeholders, all the measures were done with them, was the predictability. So this is the problem that we still have, and maybe this could be addressed better, but it's not only the Slovenian problem, it's the problem of each and every country, how to have the same protocols on the boards, health protocols, and so on. So this still remains a challenge.
Thank you very much. I would also now like to ask Ms. Stacy from the OECD. I really love the sentence from one of your recent reports saying that tourism may be dramatically down, but is not out. So can you please state some inspiring practices, governments and companies that have effectively responded to COVID crisis and that help them not to stay out?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the question. Yeah, so I think we've heard this morning from the different speakers really how much tourism is impacted, and tourism will be one of the last sectors to recover, and that is having a wider impact on economic recovery. And when we look at how governments and industry have responded, we really have seen some impressive measures, and this issue in terms of how inspiring initiatives. I've been very inspired by how colleagues in the public sector have responded. We know some of the measures haven't been as effective as we would like to have been, but as Luis was pointing out, the situation has moved so rapidly that often events have overtaken many of the measures that governments have taken, that industry have taken. And we've already heard some references this morning to the supports for furloughed workers, tourism businesses in Slovenia, to support tourism businesses to adapt, to change, financial support to encourage people to travel safely when the time is right. Slovenia, in other countries, Portugal, we've also heard this of some of these examples, and this has been and continues to be a challenge. I think the crisis has been very much a call for governments and the private sector to work more closely together. And I think this may be one of the positive legacies from the crisis that we can build on also. And here I'm thinking, for example, of the task forces that have been set up to inform government response to the crisis and to prepare recovery plans. So maybe to move to a country that hasn't been mentioned yet, but Ireland's Tourism Recovery Task Force was chaired by an industry representative, and so too is the Recovery Oversight Group that's monitoring the implementation of the tourism recovery plan. Another example that comes to mind are the data sharing partnerships and initiatives to help fill those data gaps that really were exacerbated. They were there before the crisis, but they were really exacerbated by the crisis in terms of having timely data, relevant data for policy, for business decision making. So here we can think of MasterCard and other businesses that have really made their available through dashboards and other initiatives, sometimes paid for, sometimes freely available. And there's different models that have been used. And I think it is important to recognise the many innovations within the tourism sector itself to respond, from new outdoor dining experiences, activities, to COVID-safe festivals, events, including supporting the vaccination efforts, which Kerstin Jorna referred to also. So tourism plays a role also within that wider effort. If we look at some of the essential actions that are needed now to support the recovery, most important recovery action right now, and this is not just in tourism, this is also for the wider economic recovery. And again, this was referred to by Kerstin Jorna, is the vaccine rollout. Europe is making good progress, but the mantra that no one is safe until everyone's safe is particularly relevant for tourism. Another piece of the puzzle is safely restarting international travel. We've made progress, but again, as has already been said, events are moving rapidly. At the OECD, we have been working on this issue through the Safe International Mobility Initiative, and we've been working closely with the European Union, with the World Health Organization, and other stakeholders, and it's also benefited hugely from the involvement of the private sector. And I suppose the OECD's involvement there has been to bring together different parts of government and policy communities to make progress on these difficult issues. Not all problems have been solved. This is an ongoing issue. But again, from an OECD perspective, we've been also helping to bring the discussion beyond, for example, on the EU digital COVID certificate, to bring that beyond the EU countries to third. So I think just a final mention is governments are also thinking ahead to how to build forward better. And again, that has already been mentioned. So New Zealand, for example, there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answers. I would now call Ms. Lola Cardenas, the Senior Vice President of the VTTC. Lola, may we see you? Are you with us? The question for you would be similar. The first question would be, and I would really, like to hear from you really brief and maybe direct answers. Can you also point out some cases of good practices in terms of measures and examples of the countries that reacted well on COVID? And I also have another bit additional question. VTTC is doing incredible job in measuring the tourism impact, most economically. We heard today a lot of calls that we have to start measuring the tourism success differently. How we should do it?
Hi, good morning all, and thank you so much for Levika for having us, Maja, Minister, colleagues, Luis, Alessandra, and it's a pleasure to join all of you digitally. Very briefly, for those of you who do not know, at WTTC, we represent the private sector globally, members over 200 CEOs covering the whole tourism ecosystem, the whole value chain of travel and tourism. So to start with the very first question on some good practices, I think the whole world has probably reacted, and loads of support measures have been put in place in many countries, and all governments have implemented policies to help, from funding the repatriation at the beginning of the crisis to job retention schemes. And so the UK, Italy, France, they focus very much on some work protection policies. Portugal, and we heard from Luis, and Singapore, for example, have put in place training and reskilling schemes. That's so important, and that was highlighted. Canada, the Philippines, and the US maybe, and we do have a best practice report that we just published they've implemented some measures to boost liquidity for travel and tourism businesses like destination management organizations, agencies, airports. Others have put in place fiscal support measures and to support with like tax schemes, and that was Australia or Iceland. So and the EU, I would like to also highlight probably the importance and the fact that the EU and the European Commission has, since the beginning of the pandemic, supported and worked hand in hand and very closely with the private sector, not only recognizing the importance of travel and tourism, as Alessandra highlighted as well, and because we are really a source for good and a powerful tool for fighting the economic decline that we are seeing and unemployment, of course. And just very briefly, we have been, besides representing the sector, we do also, for more than 30 years now, economic research on the impact that travel and tourism has in countries' GDP. We had, and we've heard this morning, the golden age of travel and tourism, 2019. The crisis hit, and you mentioned, the data has been mentioned. This pandemic has been 18 times bigger than the global financial crisis, and for us, key priority, Jane referred to it, is the resumption of international travel. So mobility, Luis mentioned it, mobility is crucial, predictability is crucial, and we have loads of inconsistencies. So consistency is really, really needed to bring back consumer trust. We have the demand, but we really need to see how we can really bring consistency to the globe.
Thank you very much. I would now ask Dr. Hardy. Dr. Hardy, you are in Asia, if I understand correctly at the moment. What is the time? We are at the morning. We are still in morning session here in Slovenia. Good morning.
Good morning, or good afternoon morning. For me. It's 4:30 in the afternoon, so it's a very reasonable time.
Yes, great to have you. So you're closely observing also the recovery in Asia and Pacific region. We are so far away, due to all of the mobility obstacles that we have, but we see the first signs of recovery in Singapore, Hong Kong, Beijing. So what are the recovery lessons from Asia and Pacific that you would point out as a cases of good practices? And please tell us, when can we expect the Asian tourists in Europe? And what will be the key activities to regain the Asian tourist confidence?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to actually say to Alessandra and everyone else who's actually in Slovenia, I'm extremely jealous of all of you. I love going to Slovenia and visiting Bled, and I really missed actually being there and actually seeing all of you. In Asia, the situation is very different from certainly from what I see in the media from the West and certainly from Europe. Most of our borders are actually still closed. Pretty much all borders are closed in Asia at the moment. Singapore, as you know, has reopened 2 lanes recently with Brunei and Germany, which are effectively starting, I believe, next week. But you see that 80% of the population in Singapore have been vaccinated so far. And that number keeps continuing to increase. Now, you would think this is actually really good news, and it is. But you see also how cautious they are. They are only opening 2 lanes at the moment. They are thinking of opening others in the future, but not in the near future. They want to see first what will be the impact of the reopening with Germany and Brunei over the next few weeks and months before they start considering opening other lanes moving forward. Most countries in Asia are in a similar situation where we're all very cautious. But sadly, for many of the other countries in the region, in Thailand, where I currently reside, vaccination rate is extremely slow. We only have 8% of the population in Thailand which are vaccinated. We have a population of 68 million. In Malaysia, which is our neighbor, we're in a similar situation. In Indonesia, where there's a population is over 250 million people, vaccination is also extremely slow. So for most destinations around the region here in Southeast Asia and some part of North Asia, with the exception of China, vaccination and vaccines are still way, way behind. And that's the main difference. If you go back a year ago, in Thailand, we barely had any cases of COVID. Actually, we were COVID-free for a very long time. We had no death for several months for most part of 2020. And the situation changed really, really fast afterwards. Now we're in the opposite situation where in Europe and the West, vaccination rates are actually accelerating at a really fast pace. And here we're lagging behind. So the second part of your question is, when can we expect to see Asians traveling to Europe? I believe you're going to have to wait for a very long time. Because if the conditions to travel are you have to be vaccinated, which is certainly the trend at the moment, well, there are not many of us who are vaccinated at the moment. So that trend will actually take longer. Now, of course, there are possibilities to travel to some destination doing testing and quarantines and etc. And for business purposes, well, people may have to do it and they will do that. For holidays, they'll pick destinations where they can travel maybe closer to home, where maybe quarantine is not necessary if they're not yet vaccinated, for example. Even here in Thailand, traveling within the country, between cities and province, we have restrictions. We were on lockdown until 2 days ago, and we're in the red zone area. There are actually 59 provinces out of 73 who are in red zones at the moment. So traveling between provinces and cities is even a challenge within the country here. So I wish I could give you better news and that the fact there will be people traveling from Asia to Europe sooner, but I believe it will be longer. The recovery will be uneven, as it was mentioned by Alessandra before.
Thank you very much for this very honest and open answer. And Petra, I would then address to you. Having this heard, city tourism is super dependent on overseas, and it can partially try to compensate with the domestic market. What can we expect in terms of the city tourism recovery, having heard all of these predictions in the morning and now from our panelists?
Thank you. First of all, hello everyone in live, which is really great that we can be live. And of course, warm greetings to everyone online as well. Yes, city tourism, tourism in general, of course, we all know is facing a lot of challenges, and city tourism, I wouldn't say did, but is hurting the most. But I would really like to thank first Luis, who said through the eyes of ETC that it's also one of the most wanted. Well, we tend to forget that because we're all talking about the outdoors now and this kind of experiences. Because we are looking for a quality, and we are looking for unlocked experiences, but of course next to safety, and city breaks are perfect for that. But like in every crisis, this is also for city tourism a great opportunity for next big steps. And the key is in involving local environment with on a basis of healthy patterns from before, and using this new time with new technologies. There are a lot of really throughout Europe, the DMOs are making a big steps in not only authenticity but also in creativity, because we have to have really good new practices in order to move forward. Just to name few, for example, Valencia is making big steps forward or towards a title, a world design capital, using design as a tool to showcase their heritage. Valencia has also made very huge steps ahead or forward in sustainability, introducing the whole digital tourism system with this state-of-the-art new measurements for our IT solutions for water resumption, for using blockchains or crypto labels, and they're basically now teaching the world how to really use data in a positive way. Paris, I mean, on its way to making Olympics and Paralympics 24, they're basically reevaluating the big event, for their own benefit, which is the right way to do big events. to start with locals first. Paris also have their really vivid campaign called Paris Attitude, teaching foreigners how to use their localhood. Amsterdam was doing that already in the pre-COVID times. They were really ahead with thinking of that, but they were forced into it. Paris, however, is using this new situation to build this. Bruges in Belgium or Denmark in Copenhagen in Denmark, they're addressing their cultural sector differently. I mean, a lot of destinations are addressing cultural sector, of course, because it's our core, the culture. We can't live with, I mean, especially nowadays, we can't live without films, music, and so forth when we are so much at home. But these two basically tackled in a big, bold steps. For example, Bruges made in this really challenging time, a big triennale introducing new state-of-the-art installations to exhibit their cultural heritage. Whereas in Denmark, they addressed their cultural partners individually to help them find a new business model, how to address locals and foreigners. And there are, several other, I don't know, Antwerp Cares, that's the last one that I will actually also expose. Antwerp Cares means that they introduce their caring principles in their branding, telling to the world, to the locals and to the foreigners, what do they care about? What should everyone who comes to them cherish and value? So basically the key is into asking locals to dance, because we actually were so far admitting them to the ball, but we didn't really asking them to dance. I really like that parallel. Mm-hmm. And this is...
It's more inclusion.
Yes,
not
definitely.
not just, but including. Ms. Hodrian, I'm just coming to you, and coming to you again with another elephant in the room. You are bringing together hotels, restaurants, bars, and cafes in 33 European countries. And we all know that the financial situation of those companies in the tourism industry is not at its best. They are suffering from the effects of the pandemic. The governments did help. And we heard from a lot of examples how this help was shared. So what is your standpoint? How will this company financially go further, and what kind of support would they need in the future in order to reach that goal of the green and sustainable transition?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here as representative of this very wonderful and diverse business, which is hospitality. You were mentioning bars, restaurants, cafes. I also want to congratulate sincerely this hotel, the management and the staff, because they are demonstrating today, and I think we can be proud in the industry. We are demonstrating that we are perfectly capable of adjusting to the health condition situation, digital innovation, running hybrid meetings, and for everyone to share and enjoy. So that's really important, also a demonstration how our sector is continuously being brought in those change and this new expectation. So really it's important. Now, speaking today, and I've heard, and I think we've all hopefully experienced a nice summer, the ability to travel and to go to very nice places, but unfortunately, many companies still in Europe in the sector are closed or on survival mode. If you take some segment of our sector, nightclubs, I come from Belgium, where they might open on 1st of October only, and there are still a lot of uncertainties. So really, we have, and it may sound over-dramatic, but let's be clear, it's really still a devastating situation for many companies, from small family-owned business to larger hotel chain. So I think clearly, and many of these companies, because I heard a lot about, of course, the situation pre-COVID, were investing, were viable companies, were creating jobs, were creating growth in their country, and they still can do that. But coming to your point, we need to help them a bit further. I think it's true that at European level, world level, and in many countries, support have been put in place to protect those business and the jobs they create. That's clear, and it worked. And in many across OTREC membership, that has been very important. But somehow the recovery, the restart, and let's be clear, reopening an establishment doesn't mean recovery. It will take much longer, and I heard somebody, otherwise mentioning break-even, but at the end it's just surviving and making sure you maybe stop losing, and maybe 1 or 2 months of opening won't make up for the 5 or 6 months where you have to be forced to be closed. So really, I think the message is this sector can be really a part of the restart, the recovery for the good, can invest in sustainability, but certainly needs this extended support, and really because these companies are viable, but they need to survive to create that wealth.
Marie, thank you very much, and thank you very much for really bringing it up again, that yes, we have to point it out. Many of them are closed. You bring up the nightclubs. I think that many of us did not visit them for a long time because they are closed, and those are the things that will have to be addressed. State Secretary, Ms. Seitz, I'm getting back to you, and I may be boring because I'm repeating the questions that I had for Luis, but I'm really trying to find an answer in it. And again, the main obstacles for travel and tourism are travel protocols. And again, I'm going to react to the no single tourism market, and maybe I would really like if you can share your point of view. How can member states and European Commission react better to unify those protocols? Those are the also main obstacles between us and the closed companies. It's because our mobility is limited.
Yeah, those protocols, border protocols, are actually a tougher cookie than they seem to be. Each government could adopt different measures to help their companies in their home countries. That was actually the easier task. We just had to decide what and how to help them. But once you have more countries that all have their maybe a bit different look on how this COVID situation should be handled, then it's a much longer, it will be a longer process to unify the protocols. Last year, we were in a complete uncertainty how to travel from, let's say, Portugal to Slovenia. It was a nightmare. You didn't know we'll have to go to quarantine, in which country we'll have to go to quarantine. This year, much better, much easier, but we're still not there. I believe that in 2022, those protocols, at least in the European Union, will be unified completely. And this predictability for each one of us who will decide to travel to different countries will be much easier and simpler. But as we heard, when we talk about the rest of the world, this is still a challenge. Because of so many different situations in each country, and mostly measures are proposed by the health ministers, and they have primarily their main concern is to keep the public health their priority. And afterwards, we think about how people would travel from, let's say, Thailand to Slovenia or China and so on. So this is the problem in each and every country that we come from, and that will be a much tougher cookie. And I expect that to be, as it was said, also in 2020, still a problem. So we will have to depend on domestic guests, and when I talk domestic, I talk European single market.
Yes. Having that also said, the share of domestic tourism in Europe grew from 55% in 2019 to 70% in 2020. So we may expect, if I understand correctly, that this is going to continue, at least for a while.
I believe that the reality is that COVID and the coronavirus will stay with us forever, or at least for a very long time. So until we learn how to control it and live with it, this will be our reality. And as it looks right now, our reality will be that we will have to depend more than we used to on domestic tourists.
Thank you very much. Going back to our digital panelist, Jane, I would like to refer to you. In terms of what Marie was saying and the State Secretary, we all need this transition towards a digital and sustainable. And the companies are at the poor financial situation. European Commission at beginning in 2020 estimated that we need 161 billion worth of investment in the green and digital transformation on the industries. So what has to be done from the perspective of governments and industry to facilitate this green and digital transformation? Can you really, try to communicate us the measures? What can we do in order to kind of step closer to this goal?
Sure, and we've heard today, since the start of the crisis, there's been a lot of talk about building back better and this idea of a smart, greener digital transition so that we have a more sustainable and resilient sector in the future. And if we really mean this, if we really want to build forward better, as the expression goes, we need to ensure that the huge investments of time, money, resources by governments, but also by industry, are targeted for the future. And that's also important if we are to avoid the mistakes of the past, which have also been highlighted. So it's very much about the huge resources, the actions we're taking in as much as there is a crisis and emergency within tourism sector and livelihoods are the priority in the short term. We do need to be looking towards the longer term at the same time. And that's building in to the current supports from government, for example, conditionality clauses that in terms of how they are used within the sector. Digitalization, green transition is a key part of building forward better and to fast track the progress to reduce the environmental impact of tourism to green tourism policies, green tourism business practices. So some of the ways and approaches that can be taken. It's about mainstreaming sustainability principles and environmental targets into the tourism policies. And now we're talking about tourism recovery plans as well. And also showing that tourism is well integrated with wider recovery plans, environmentally related, digital and so forth. The issue of monitoring, measurement, data has already been highlighted. We need to redefine tourism success, the issue of quality rather than quantity, and also make sure that when we're measuring the recovery, we're measuring the things that matter, the environmental impact, the social impact, the resilience of the tourism economy, the sustainability. Private sector has a role to play in this, obviously. This is a economic sector. Government needs to work closely with industry to help reduce the environmental impact of tourism activities and support sector-specific initiatives, but also encouraging, supporting, incentivizing tourism businesses, destinations to adopt greener, more digital business models and practices. Digitalization is closely intertwined with the green agenda to play a role in improving resource efficiency as well. So I think these are all to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Hardy, you're still with us. I did also a bit of research and actually you find out also that you were, beside you being a former CEO in PATA, you have been working in the non-profit organization focusing on protecting environment, and you have 30 years of experience in aviation. And having this known, I have two questions for you. The first one is that by end of 2020, half of the European fleet were grounded. How do you evaluate the situation in aviation industry and what are the prospects of recovery? Can you be more optimistic on this one?
I'm confident that the airline and the aviation industry will follow the market. You know, it's a business, so they will follow the trends. They will recover from this, but it will be really difficult. If there's one job I would hate to have to do at the moment is what we call a network planner. Those are the people who actually have to figure out where the aircraft will be actually be flying, not only tomorrow, but actually in the next year or the next 3 to 5 years. In a traditional way, an airline would actually plan their route planning and the frequency of flights to a destination several years in advance. And also in line with the purchasing and acquisitions of aircraft for the future at the moment. So the entire business model for an airline is now actually severely challenged because it's so unpredictable. The recovery, as it was mentioned several times before by other speakers, is and will continue to be uneven. So some routes in some countries and some cities and some states will reopen only to certain other destinations. And it's really difficult for an airline to actually plan in this environment. So that's the big challenge that the airline actually faces. The other challenge that the industry will face, not only aviation, but hospitality and others, which was mentioned also by Luis and others before, is human resources, talent. Many people who worked in our sector have now actually went into other industries because they see that the recovery will be very long. It was mentioned before that it won't recover till 2024 to numbers, pre-2019 and et cetera. So many people have actually changed their jobs into other sectors, and bringing them back will also be a challenge. So there is hope, I think, for the airline industry. They will fly where there's actually demand, but the recovery will be slow and they will be following what the trends are.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a brief question. What can be done in order to transform aviation industry? I really, it looks like a kind of incompatible match to become more environmentally friendly, because we are hearing, I was at the last conference from UN, and when they were trying to address what can we do in order to save the environment, the first aspect was stop flying. And yes, we all agree that yes, flying is contributing to the climate change, but also mass production and mass consumption is. So maybe your point of view, how can we make this industry greener, and can we?
I think it can. There's already a lot of progress that's been made over the last decade in terms of biofuels and also in terms of manufacturing of aircraft, making them more fuel efficient. So there's been an enormous amount of progress. But no doubt there is still a lot more to be done moving forward to improve the industry. There are also policies that have been made, like in France, for example, where actually flights within 2 hours have now actually been banned because you can actually, if you can do it by train, you don't need to do it by flight. Now, some people will say, well, it may not be very convenient. I actually personally think it makes a lot of sense. And it's much faster to travel by train from city to city than having to go and wait in queues in airports for a very long period of time for short distance, for example. So I think policies are there to help to maybe make it more environmentally friendly moving forward. Technologies is moving at a really phenomenal rate too. And I do believe that within the next 20 years, we're going to see new type of aircraft coming to the market that are going to be much more fuel efficient, and also maybe electric and other type of hydrogens and et cetera, which will be more environmentally friendly for our skies.
Thank you very much. Petra, I would refer to you now in terms of transformation. We heard that we all have to transform and change, and this includes DMOs as well. And you're being a director of DMO and also leading the European Cities Marketing Organization gives you a great prospect in what is happening. So, and we heard from the Slovenian Tourism Board Director, Ms. Maja, that they have to orchestrate DMOs, this change that is in front of us. So, can you also be a bit more concrete and tell us what kind of transformations are in front of the DMOs at the moment for the future?
DMOs always had challenges, and now we have a great opportunity to actually be heard, because these are two really, really big challenges in front of DMOs. First one is to introduce new practices and to bring everyone to the table, and the second definitely is to find the voice to be actually heard by all the stakeholders, because we are the ones who are unifying the stakeholders at the destination. We used to be, but now we are the ones who actually have to find a voice to be heard from all of them, because in the world of so many, in an uncertain world, when everyone has their own agenda, is really, really difficult to be in between. So the fact is that DMOs have to be more agile than we were in the past. And definitely to take this key role and become a scouts for new trends, and in this this new interest in sustainability and globalization, as opposed to globalization, actually to advocate this new focus on globalization itself. So, but it's easier said than done. And this is the biggest challenge. Like, I mean, we're talking about basically everything unknown. Today, we know what the trends are showing, but how it will be, it's up to all of us, and DMOs are the first ones to have not only the vision, but the courage to lead that. And like I said, it's easier said than done, and I would actually appeal to all of my colleagues, especially here in Slovenia, because I love my country really a lot, but throughout not only Europe, to the world, to really, really have this courage and speak up.
Thank you, Petra. Ms. Cardenas, I would refer to you now in terms of also this change that we are all discussing about. And you mentioned it before, that people mindset while travel have changed. We discussed this today. We travel closer to home. We tend to take a longer holidays, which is good. We are also more concerned about safety and security, and we are also booking our hotels and flights if we fly on the very last minute. So changes in the mindset will bring significant changes in the industry on the long run. So what actions can tourism operators take today to be better performed on this change demand that we will follow the industry?
Yes, it's true that this crisis has probably helped us all to put things in perspective and to contextualize everything. And as the travel and tourism sector, we do have, I think, a unique opportunity to really rethink business models. It's been mentioned now that COVID has accelerated mainly two agendas, the digital one and the sustainability one, of course. So for sure, digitalization and technology will probably be a key pillar when looking into the future of the sector, and everything that is touchless, seamless, that would actually help the passenger, the traveler experience, and of course sustainability, meaningful sustainability. So it's a priority for consumers. It's a priority now for policymakers, of course, for industry, and we do have a big responsibility. So traveling more responsibly and making sure that when we travel, we have a positive impact in the community. We've mentioned this community engagement. I think it's crucial to keep that in mind. It's like a public, private, and community partnership, the PPCPs, as we like putting it. And so public awareness of the environment has increased, and consumers are thinking more about the environment since COVID, probably. Mm-hmm. So we are facing, as businesses, more scrutiny and for the environmental track record and the support. I mean, sustainability is very wide. It's also, we mentioned diversity, inclusion, and so these are really important aspects. And then, of course, something looking into the near future, safety and hygiene protocols. They have come to stay for quite some time. The Secretary of State mentioned it. We need to learn how to coexist with the virus, to live with the virus. And so we have seen great response at destination level in really implementing all these protocols, private sector as well. So I think all these together will certainly help. And as I said, we are actually now having the great opportunity of like building back better in a meaningful way and to really rethink business models. And if I may very briefly to what Mario was mentioning and the importance actually of trying to see how we really need to work together, public, private. We've been calling for this partnership since the beginning of the pandemic, and we're seeing Asia is closed down, very much closed down. Other areas and parts of the world are opened, and so we really need to see how mutual recognition. We are in a globalized world. This is a global business, and so we're really calling very strongly to really have to restart international mobility, and all this is going to help in the near future.
Thank you very much. Yes, we did refer to tourism as a global business, but at the same time, we are also kind of realizing that become very domestic in the last years. Maybe Maria, I will get just briefly back to you, and because you are working closely with the companies, and yes, we talk about the financial situation that is terrifying in some cases, and again, I will also ask you to hear your perspective on the human capital that is being lost in the industry, and maybe just briefly, we heard a lot of opinions, but maybe just briefly from your side as well.
Thank you. It's true that it's very clear that the issue right now, it's really, there is a big staffing crisis, and it was mentioned many times, and it is felt across the sector. Of course, when the crisis hits, a lot of hopefully support were made to help people to keep their job but stay at home. But nevertheless, now as the business has been reopened, we see a clear shortage of the workforce. It's not a new issue, and unfortunately, somehow but here it's really becoming critical. Unfortunately, I don't have the golden bullet on the issue. Maybe couple of areas. Certainly, it is working in the hospitality. It's a very diverse kind of work. You have people who have their first work experience, students who need to work also maybe to help their studies, but hospitality can be a career of choice, and it is for many people, and we need to communicate also, and that's something we can do together with a public-private partner. I want to promote also apprenticeship. I think it's very important. And last but not least, maybe at EU level, we developed together with all these partners a few years ago the European Hospitality Skill Passport. So really, we need to tell about the skills we need, and we need to do this matchmaking and really promote and communicate what are the needs. But also, again, it's a wonderful sector to work with. It has constraints, but I think going forward, we need to promote those at early stage, this communication and this apprentice scheme and what the sector needs.
Thank you very much. Our time it's closing up, and I have just two very brief questions. The ladies, you will apologize me because I'll ask the gentlemen two last questions, and there's no gender disbalance here. But maybe Mario Hardy, I will just get back to you with a final question, and please for a brief answer. The tourism industry is focusing too much on going back in 2019. Is this blocking us from seeing beyond the golden time of the extensive tourism growth? And how do you see the future of the European tourism?
I do believe that there's maybe too much emphasis in trying to get back to 2019 numbers and etc. It was mentioned before by Jane and by many others that moving forward, we already had a mission before 2019 to redefine tourism moving forward, to make it more sustainable and more responsible. Now we have an opportunity to actually restart tourism in a better way moving forward. And I think we should take this opportunity to improve on what we're actually looking in terms of how we measure success in tourism moving forward. That's really important. I also think that the current situation is forcing us to move in that direction because because of the uneven opening and inequity in terms of vaccines and reopening of countries at the moment. We are moving towards that goal anyway. So let's take that opportunity to improve tourism, make it better moving forward.
Thank you very much. State Secretary, Ms. Zeitz, the last question is regarding, and then I will open the floor for your questions, so get prepared. The first one that is raising the hands will actually get opportunity to ask the questions for this great panel. Ms. Zeitz, Slovenia holds the presidency of the Council of the EU. The agenda for Tourism 2030 started under the Portugal presidency, and now it's going to be finished hopefully under the Slovenian ones. So which initiatives and activities would also be initiated by Slovenia within this Agenda 2030?
Yeah, I would like to draw your attention to the 17th of November.
Yes, 17th of November.
17th of November, Brdo. That's the date where our presidency, together with the Commission, will organize the European Tourism Forum. And on that occasion, we will try to find some of the answers to the questions that also the agenda needs to tackle. For instance, how our tourism ecosystem can become green and climate neutral. We know that by the 2050, the EU has set a goal to become the first climate neutral continent. And this is, as nice as it sounds, it's a tough job to do. Because it's gonna need us to completely change our habits of traveling, producing food, etc. We will need to develop technologies to reduce emissions. The last 10% of emissions that will need to be reduced will be done by technology that has not been invented yet. So this is a tough problem. Then how we can have our tourism ecosystem to be more inclusive, more social just? How can we provide employment and well-being for a more different social groups? How can we employ people in our rural areas with tourism? Then, of course, digital transition. How can we use new technologies to better plan and manage tourism? How to better promote it? And last but not least, there are many more questions, but also how we can reflect tourism in other EU policies. Yeah. So we have heard that tourism is everywhere, but can we see it in other policies? I think that we can do more regarding that. So 17th of November.
Thank you very much. I would now ask the audience, please, yes, we have a question. Dominic, we have a question down there. Can we facilitate the mic? Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. It's fantastic to see you alive here, to hug you, to touch you, to talk with you. And thank you, organizers, to have us the chance to be together. Thank you also all the speakers to sharing with us bright future of the tourism, which we believe in. Actually, I'm one of those who also during this Corona extended my skills. Although like the owner of the resort, also I'm specialized for the cleaning the dishes and all the activities like you in the reception. But the Corona gives us a chance and a moment that we can also redefine what the tourism is. And after 2 years, I can say of Corona that I see the bright future of the tourism. It's never better moment to make a step forward in developing tourism in Europe. I don't have doubts that the tourism will go up and come back. I have only one question, which I will kindly ask to maybe share with us some good examples. Who will work in tourism? And especially, do we have any good practices how to involve or entertain the young millennials to join the tourism, the bright side of the tourism, and because we know the tourism is our people and the tourism is a lifestyle. So do we have worldwide any good practices how to work and how to step forward to this question? Thank you very much.
Anyone would like to take this one? Alessandra, Luis, you're also invited. We may use a TikTok, but I don't think this is going to be enough, Dominic. So I'm asking the panelists who are going to try to answer this question? State Secretary.
I will not directly answer because I don't know, I will speak for Slovenia. What we are preparing or what we are working on at our ministry regarding the problem of getting people interested in working in tourism. This problem is also the consequence of low added value in Slovenian tourism. And everybody knows when you work in tourism that this job is a hard-working job. It's a job that you need to love. So we are looking into directions. So one direction is how we can raise the added value so that it will be financially reasonable to get into this sector, and then how to promote it and make it really attractive for young people to decide to work in this area. And the third one is also that those parts of working in tourism that are not as pleasant as we would like them to be and can be replaced by new technology, how can we speed up this process so that all this will end up in making employment in tourism prettier.
So if I translate this, pay them better, use the technology to improve their quality of work and life, and make the job sexier and more appealing for the young population. Thank you very much. I have other questions. No, I don't have a question. We have a question down there and we need a mic. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for this great session. I'm representing here Slovenian Convention Bureau, and my question is, especially from our friends from Portugal, I really liked your presentation, and I feel the opportunity here. We're talking about tourism, but we are not really dividing the tourism between meetings industry and tourism as people coming. I see, Petra, you were mentioning Paris Olympic Games, and also Web Summit is coming back to Lisbon. So this is also something that I see an opportunity now, not only to focus on people, on tourists, but also focus on business travelers, because as Dr. Hardy said, people are willing to take vaccines and travels for the business. So I would just like to hear, how is it happening with Web Summit, and also from Petra, how is maybe Tourism Ljubljana? Is this really now the opportunity actually to focus on the meetings industry rather than only on tourists? Thank you.
Petra, can you take it over?
Business industry is definitely a part of tourism too. So, but the fact is that if I speak for Ljubljana, it's one of the main pillars in our strategy, and the same goes for the whole Slovenia. I know that it was also prepared that we should talk about the business meetings as well, and you were, if I'm not mistaken, up to bring what's his name?
Bill Gates?
Weren't you?
Yes.
Bill Gates who said that it should go to half. Well, people wouldn't listen as much to Bill Gates if it wouldn't be for business segments, so he should be more optimistic. Because, you know, we've always, once upon a time there were Silk Road, new continents explored and so forth, so this is nowadays called business tourism. And it's going to bounce definitely back, and we shouldn't be as pessimistic as some, or as it was last year constantly said and was starting to repeat this year, but it's now reducing. So business tourism is, we all know it's higher consumption, it's a longer length of stay, and it means healthier, strictly economy-wise, healthier part. So we should nurture it, but it's a part of tourism. You know, because we're all leisure tourists after a lot of us are leisure tourists after we finish business event.
Thank you, Petra. Bill Gates said that business tourism go on half, and we all respectfully disagree with him. That's our message to Bill Gates. Before we finalize, Alessandra, you were raising the hands to try to answer this question. Here.
Thank you, my dear, for giving me the space to also answer, because definitely, I mean, I have a personal bias towards the importance of business tourism, what we call business tourism in general, for the development of tourism. I would like to highlight that today we would not, when we say and we talk about people, we're not necessarily meaning leisure, we're meaning everything. We're meaning us, for example. I consider myself a business tourist at the moment. But what is very important, and what I think was a missed occasion, I would say also from the authorities, is that the business travelers, business tourism, could have been used as the real trial for many things. Because the business travelers are the ones that are definitely more cautious, more aware of the impact of what they're doing. And so instead of thinking immediately about, like, I would say, like a completely global, which is correct in a way, solution, I mean, I think it's a missed occasion that we didn't do more events, rather than just saying, okay, let's do virtual. Virtual is not the alternative. Absolutely not. And we're here to prove it. And it cannot be that every time there is a difficulty, people just turn around and saying, okay, but we'll do it hybrid. That is not the solution. Because what we can do, the differences we can make, is through events like this, which we call business tourism. We can test, we can put good KPIs on it, evaluate, and then maybe implement and enlarge. So definitely, I think out of everything, we should really keep. This is like a pledge. I speak more of a tourism passionate and professional that, of course, in my position as UNWTO, but this would be an appeal for governments, especially in Europe, to take this very, very seriously.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. Thank you, all of the panelists. I see there are a lot of hands that you would like to ask more questions, but unfortunately we are run out of the time, which means that we'll have to meet on the 17th of November at Brda and discuss the further future of tourism. Can we just put the hands together to our digital? Thank you very much. And to our panelists in live. So, it will take just a few minutes to conclude today's panel. I think it was a wonderful discussion and wonderful panel. I started with a roller coaster, and I'm probably going to finish with it. This is an outrageous ride. And I think what we heard today is that we are not alone on this ride. There are a lot of people on the train. So I think it's very important to share and to discuss how can we actually come to the destination that we want. COVID will not end tourism, we all know this, but we may hope that it will accelerate the changes towards better, towards more sustainable, digital, and not to forget also human-oriented fashion of tourism, not on paper, but in practice. World is destination number one is Europe, and Europe should lead in this transition. Like Luis was saying, like Alessandra, our minister and the director of the Slovenian Tourism Board. So we should be bold in taking this historic chance to change. Change is not easy. It's actually hard at the first. It's very messy in the middle, but it's great at the end. So let's try to change, and let's make this industry even better than it is. Let's be bold and concrete in Agenda 3050. So that we know where we're directing. Let's improve governance in tourism at the supranational level. And I'm looking also at you, Luis. And let's create a single tourism market for all of us that we want to travel. Why? Because there are millions of tourism businesses around Europe. And those millions of tourism businesses represent millions of reasons for the Commission, for the governments, and for all of us to change the tourism for the better of tomorrow. With this, I would conclude today's panels, and once more, thanks to all speakers, all presenters, dear panelists, and to all of you in audience that were with us for 3 hours without a break. So, let's put the hands together for all of us. With this, we are closing the official session, and I'm the only thing between you and lunch now. And I would like kindly to invite you, in the name of the Ministry and Slovenian Tourism Board, to join us on the Tastes of Slovenia, European Region of Gastronomy 2021. The menu is prepared by the Chief Simon Bertoncel, and it will be served as a standing buffet at the terrace of the Grand Hotel Toplice. You may access the terrace through the restaurant. So, bon appetit. Thank you very much.